The Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium presents Paola Bruni and Kathryn Petruccelli, recorded live via Zoom on October 10th, 2021.
Well, welcome on this beautiful autumn day, early autumn day, to the October 21 Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium reading. This is our 19th Zoom-based reading. And as we continue to work through the consequences of the coronavirus pandemic, and as we continue in varying measures to deal with the stress and the strain of life, as it has, I think, forever been changed, much as we would wish that such were not the case, but I think it has. So what we'll invite you to do in all of this and through the miracle of Zoom and our being together is ask you to step back and experience the next hour or so, the world through the lens of poetry, and enjoy two outstanding poets who are going to take us away from such cares and concerns as we may have. All brought to you by the Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium, which is an affiliation of poets in the Monterey Bay area and really beyond now. We've been doing these readings for many years, and predecessor organizations, our ancestors, if you will, have been doing this for a long time. It's been decades. We are now under the guidance of John Lowy, who's the dean of the consortium, and he is known to all of us and is a marvelous poet himself. We're on Facebook, as I mentioned, Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium, and in the chat room is the link to the URL. And as I mentioned, we have a YouTube channel, which is accessible. Simply just go to YouTube, Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium. Today, we get to enjoy poetry from two wonderful poets, gifted poets, Paola Bruni and Kathryn Petruccelli. These folks are coming to us, Paola from the Monterey Bay area and Kathryn from Massachusetts. Each of our poets will read for 20 to 30 minutes, and we're in for a wonderful afternoon. So I'd invite you, if you have not gotten it already, get your cup of tea or glass of wine or a cup of coffee and snack and sit back and enjoy what's going to be a wonderful afternoon. Our first reader is Paola. Paola Bruni's work has been published or is forthcoming in the Southern Review, Ploughshares, 5 Points Journal, Rattle, Massachusetts Review, Catamaran, Literary Reader, and Comstock Review, and others. She's a two-time Pushcart Prize nominee, and she's also the winner of the Morton Marcus Poetry Prize and the Muriel Bailey Poetry Prize, judged by the wonderful Ellen Bass. So we're blessed to have someone with us who's a terrific poet. Paola, no further introductions, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Bob. And I wanted to thank John and Bob and Jennifer and the entire Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium for hosting this event and for allowing me to read today. So thank you. As I was preparing some pieces, I was thinking back, a dear friend of mine, some of you may know, the late Jory Post, once said to me, you know, your poems are a lot about food and sex. And I thought about that. And today, as I was pulling them together, I'm like, God, he's right. But I come from an Italian family. Italian was my first language. So there's a little bit of that sprinkled into my poetry. So I'm going to start with a piece called Limoncini, which in Italian is little lemons. The small craters of the sun-tipped Villafranca lemon, bitter to the tongue. Perhaps, my grandmother would say, a propagation like the Sicilians themselves, too much salt in the air. The fruit has a pale oval neck, an inconspicuous nipple. To her, it was a stunted variety, as I feared was I. My breasts she termed limoncini, a pair of petite sour fruits I'd inherited from my father's side. For hers were classically primo fiore, a strain of lemon excessive in their fleshy countenance. In my adolescence, she took to pinching my nipples between her thumb and forefinger. I implored my mother to intervene, but on the subject of breasts, she spoke only to say, "You didn't want my milk," my infant lips refusing to suckle. When the surgeons took my mother's left breast, I was 18 and filled with remorse. Does rejection grow invasive roots? Grandmother developed an attraction for the ample, thick-rind Genoa and Lisbon species. On special occasions, the limetta was sought, a sweet, incestuous marriage of the Eureka lemon and Mexican lime. She served fricassea di vitella, cotolette di maiale fritte, crostata di limone. Dishes so rife with lemony hues, every meal lifted to a bright archipelago. We did not understand how deeply the lemon's complex vocabulary went. Its seeds were sown. By the time I left college, grandmother stopped referring to my breasts as limoncini. Instead, un peccato, a shame. She worried I would not mate, would not propagate. How often I thought of her through my barren, childless years. Grandmother was long gone when mother's right breast was trimmed away. She was left no foliage to soak up the warmth of the world, only pale pink branches that spread across her chest. So when I was an adolescent, my father had taken to winemaking. And he had a friend who had a vineyard in Calistoga in the Napa Valley. And he decided that we had to do it from the very scratch, like you had to harvest the grapes and to make the wine. And so I was indoctrinated into this process. This next poem is called The Harvest. It was a scalding August in Calistoga when I staked my claim among a row of vines in the southwest corner of Mario's vineyard. I was 17 then and content to wield a sharp blade. The plants, a chorus line of sturdy legs and entwined arms, stout heads. Clusters of grapes with shy moon faces huddled beneath canopies. I knelt in the dirt, the pleasure of those hardy bundles in my palm, the act of slicing and separating, a release I'd only known when carving my own skin. At times, hunger overcame me, and I puckered the fruit between my lips, rolled a pale globe around the curb of my mouth, flexing the muscles of my tongue like an acrobat. Now and then I swallowed the grapes whole. Others I crushed between my teeth, a sweet pura flooding papillae. What glory to hold in your mouth things that grow. That first day I labored 14 hours, sunlight drilling holes in my back. I became like a creature burrowing further and further under the vines, my hands turning dark, sticky with residue. This was the day I learned to swallow everything. The thick, hot noise of the vineyard, simple fruit, the raw, uncensored desire that climbed around inside me, knocking on my bones, the underside of my skin. I wanted to be born again, learn to fit myself into the earth like a root. Okay, so I'm going to take a little break from the food. We'll come back to that. I'm horribly allergic to cats, but in my adult life, I've had 2 of them adopt me. Some of you may know what that's like when you end up with an animal that has chosen you regardless. But both of my cats were outdoor cats, which was caused me no degree of worry on a regular basis. This poem is called Cat. Don't wonder where she goes. Once she leaves the silk cover of your pillow, pushes her feral crown through the open window. Don't wonder about her jangling tags and flattened ears, the 2-inch pink scar across her thigh that remains hairless, the dew claw yanked, incisor broken. Don't wonder about the trash in the neighbor's yard, her papery tongue lapping up fish blood and liver, eviscerating the porous raw heart of a chicken. Don't wonder if she'll kill a mouse, crunch its marrow bones, suck its doomed remains, revel in the borrowed tang of death that follows all living things. Don't imagine the barn owls and hawks, their silent descent and fetid feathers. And don't imagine the coyote, its glittering hunger, sunken shoulders and embossed ribs. Don't concern yourself with the old shepherd that moved in across the street, its lunging maw and blind opalescent eye. Don't imagine your neighbor's faceted voice yelling, "Damn cat," the pop and whir of his pellet gun felling jays and finches from the almond trees next door. And especially, don't imagine the sleek Mercedes, its gray clouded windows, oversized tires. Above all, don't wonder about the day you'll call her name, clink the teaspoon against the can of Fancy Feast, and you'll wait, the silence, a wedge of emptiness, and your heart, all its arteries and ventricles, will know you can't save her, how there's no holding life in your hands. And so this next poem I'm going to share is about food again. This one is actually called Confections. And I have had 2 husbands, one very short-lived, and the current one a long timer. So I just want to clarify any misconceptions since my darling husband is on the line today. But Confections. Looking back, I see how perishable it all was. Him wearing a pinstripe suit, the scent of cacao beans light on his skin as he drove across state lines, elbow jutting out an open window, a camel unfiltered, dragging its trail of ash. My husband sold chocolate, semi-sweet, milk and white, sampling discs the shape of communion wafers from the trunk of his olive green Taurus. I melted down the 10-pound slabs he left on our yellow tiled counter, distilled the potion into souffle light as fog, thin-skinned decadence, mousse that shivered to the touch. City to city, he made the sail, a pusher of ancient remedies. They did not recognize him as the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl, torn from paradise for shepherding cacao to earth, nor as the Mayan trader espousing as they once did, 10 beans for a chicken, 50 beans for a woman. And so he slept with the candy store owner in Lake Falls, Michigan, the ice cream maker in Topeka, Kansas, the baker in Fresno, California, all nubile, fresh, unfettered. Later, when I learned of his dalliances, I packed my bag, all the while imagining, how could I not, each bare breast a ganache-filled truffle, each pink-rimmed vagina a raspberry cream. Okay, so let's see time. I have a little more time. So I have another poem. This one's called One Way or Another. Speaks to how fragile everything really is. My neighbor asks, did you hear about the shark attack on Manresa Beach? She is barefoot in a front yard garden plot, laying in butter lettuce and arugula, discrete lumps of kale. She has the thick athletic build of an ocean swimmer, a selkie if I've ever seen one. Every day she rides her bike to the shore, a terry towel draped across her shoulders like a small animal. 26-year-old kid, she says, punching the dirt with her bare knuckles. Should have been me. At least I've had a life. I don't share the sentiment. One way or another, she says, and I hear Deborah Harry singing in a mellifluous croon. I'm gonna find ya, I'm gonna get ya, get ya, get ya. I think of the sharp's 1-inch teeth, the startling puncture, water blistering crimson. If the virus doesn't get you, a shark will, my neighbor says. How strange our living with death, the small compression between inhale and exhale, grief, its presence in the body, a foreign government. Am I destined to be consumed by a cold-blooded fish or mutinied cells, or visited by a hemorrhage, caught in a net of twisted fate? What choice do we have? Blondie curls through the bridge. I will drive past your house, and if the lights are all down, I'll see who's around. So Kitty and I thought we'd have a little fun and read one of each other's poems. So I'm going to complete my reading with a poem by Kitty. And this one, strangely enough, has some elements of food in it. So this one is called, and I love this poem, so it's called White Tea. I'm drinking tea, white as the mug that holds it, a touch of milk, no honey, just its own sweetness. I tell my husband that the woman at the shop said she doesn't sell closed tea infusers because they aren't good for the leaves. What did she say? They could break, bruise. A note that causes my husband to roll his eyes and huff. But what if everyone, all 7.6 billion on the planet, loved enough what they love to overstretch its importance? The hairdresser who peers into my scalp, discussing the growth rate of healthy follicles, extolling his tirade on parabens as Satan's operatives. Or the dentist that would slip Grinch-like into the sleeping houses of her patients to steal away the sugared formula bottles from their babies' cribs, if she could. Later, at the import store, I choose an infuser I hope will please my husband, but not horrify the woman at the shop. If she were to see it, though of course she won't. At home, I place the leaves of the white coconut cream tea into the infuser with some care, with more reverence than I would have imagined possible only a short time ago. This is all we can ask of ourselves, to hold the world a little more gently each day than we did the day before. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Paula. That was wonderful. Just, I love your imagery. I love the stories you told us. Yeah, I'm scared of sharks. If shark doesn't get you, COVID will, or a hemorrhage, or God knows what. So I suppose that's one way to look at it, but I choose not to do that. But thank you for taking us there. And I have a question. When you were doing the winemaking work up in Calistoga, did you all take your shoes off and stop the grapes?
You know, it was just shy of that.
Okay.
Just shy of that. We actually had to put it into a pressing machine that was a hand crank, because at the time, my dad really wanted to do it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
He later developed much more interest in electronic equipment after a few seasons of that. It's quite difficult work making wine that way. Yeah.
How was the wine? Was it good?
Well, let's put it this way. It was definitely wine. It was a little on the bitter side. It was a little sharp, very tangy. But my dad was very proud of it. He designed a label for it and gave it out to all his friends and families.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you. And I love your image of souffle light as fog. That was great. And then the chocolate communion wafers. That's a nice image too. Well, thank you for taking us there. Appreciate it very much. And now we'll move on to Kathryn Petruccelli, who's coming to us from central western Massachusetts. Kathryn is a bicoastal performer and writer with an MA in teaching English language learners. Her professional life has included translating Hotel California for Hungarian high schoolers and anthologizing poetry by rival gang members. You lead a fascinating life, Kitty. Her work has recently appeared in places like the Southern Review, West Trestle Review, Plant Human Quarterly, Tinderbox, and Catamaran Literary Reader. She was nominated for Best of the Net last year in 2020. She's a past winner of San Francisco's Litquake essay contest and a finalist for the 2019 Omnidawn Broadside Poetry Prize. Kathryn teaches online writing workshops in Western Massachusetts, and her website is poetroar.com if you'd like to visit there. So Kitty, thank you for being with us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Bob. Thanks everybody for taking an afternoon to be here. And thank you to my darling poetry sister, Paola. I'm so excited that we get to read together. And thank you for that lovely reading of White Tea. Before I jump there though, I just, one of the things I admire so much about Paola's work is just, the wrapping, like the deep dive in the gosh, in language that you just have to surrender to or jump off the precipice with, you know, along with the poem. And I hear Paola's work a lot because we exchange poems, which I credit all to her. We met in a Santa Cruz poet Danusia Lamaris's workshop, and it's thanks to Paola that we're still in touch. But it was so nice to hear it, you know, as a set. The addendum to the white tea poem is that, start my time here. I am now allergic to that, to that tea that I loved so much. I've developed an allergy to coconut. So, you know, the universe doesn't let us get too far ahead. You know, it's like, oh, I have this sweet sentiment. I want you to put it in a poem. I'm like, okay. And then it's like, and you have hives. Thanks, thank you. That's awesome. So I'm gonna start my reading with one of Paola's poems. And, you know, I just love that we did this because it changed the order, at least, if not the poems that I was going to read today. And I think that's so important to see ourselves in relationship. The more I read it, the more I saw in common, you know, themes and images and things in the work that I was reading. And so anyway, you know, we often write these mini biographies, I guess, as poems about people that we love or loved. And it's through those poems that other people get to meet them. And I think that's the case with this poem, which is dedicated to her father. Owl House, Paola Bruni. It's the last thing you'd ever make. Precise cedar walls and slant box roof. A rectangle doorway cut, sanded, the house painted green, not Kelly, but a weightier color like laurel or moss. The pulley system took 3 years to sort out. When it was finally done, you hoisted the owl house 20 feet in the air on a single stem, hovered it over the deep purple cabbage, vine-hidden blueberries, maiden swaths of kale. A petite domicile, diminutive cousin to the foundations you'd poured, buildings raised, a hobby, you called it, moving us from house to house, always a workshop, a mysterious taming of tools, clawfoot hammers, mallets, chisels, wire cutters, wrenches, vice grips, clamps, and screwdrivers. You bought the best, Colombian, Pony, Stanley, Bosch, belt sanders and drills, torches and presses. But toward the end, you're making a kind of argument. Though you could barely stand, you strapped that worn leather tool belt around your hips like a gunslinger. The owl house, a final showdown. How hard it was to satisfy your urges with a body leaning sideways toward death. But you finished anyway, raised that sucker up into the white gloom of a Sunday. Now you're 9 months gone, and your burgundy cardigan hangs on the back of the workbench chair as if just shrugged from your shoulders. And I stand here in this lonely altar of metal and grease, cold, like the mausoleum where your body lies, and tell you a family of barn owls moved in. Mother, father, 2 chicks, white-faced and marble-eyed, short, sharp beaks. They inhabit your sweat and careful measurements, the final raising toward sky. So, and I will start mine. My view is weird. Let me just see. Okay. I will start with my poems with The Bed You Built. Platform higher than most. Storage shelf beneath, necessary from the days of our tiny 1-bedroom. IKEA mattress marked with our first son's birth. I lie rigid in the covers, the cat, her usual demands, scratches behind the ears, kneading at the blanket where you aren't. The phone aglow in my side vision, a text from Robin asking if I've heard anything yet. No. An offer from eBay, nothing from the hospital. I shut my eyes on what we've carved out of 2+ decades, but your scent remains. I think of you in your narrow metal bed, an IV to thin your blood, lungs plugged, genetics betraying you. The pandemic rages on, I can't be with you. And now the cat wants to get under the sheet, like she does sometimes. I hold it up, hollowed like a cave. There was a grotto I once found in a Budapest hillside long before we met. Mary, alone there, eyes lowered, hands peeking out of blue robes. She stood, flowers at sandaled feet, burden not enough or too much to fold her body in on itself. I was so young then, eager to move along on the path, thinking my pack heavy. How little time I spent pondering who might have placed her there, what it took to chisel out rock, what urgency, trouble. How diligent one must be in times of energy to build a space to rest. For those other times when strength goes missing, this bed, bolts in need of tightening, shelf slats splintered here and there. But you built it. Altar, refuge. All right, Paola, I'm skipping Tully Lake, sorry. We're going to, I just want to change up the energy a little bit. This is also weird imaginings about, you know, people on the other side, but in a lighter kind of way. We're in the garden, as we will be a few times. I'll end you in the garden too, of sorts. This is a newer poem. It's called The Sky in Hell. I stand at the edge of zinnias, Shasta daisies, a tangle of tomatoes, eating a carrot. Peak of the season. Subtle lines along its body like marking the height of a child as I bite into tender growth. Sown from minuscule seed, earth still tangible there, its fine hairs, where it gripped onto this place under our feet, like any of us might resist being pulled from what we've known. Yet I try to brush away the remnant bits as if turning my back on home. Crunch and give, tumble and grit. We swear each day all we want is to set in our palm a little more, just a touch of extended time. Another chance to dig down, grab hold, understand with a clearer mind what it means to inhabit. It's too bad there isn't a hell, buried as we could be deep in loam, cool blackness, and a fire to warm our days. Imagine the great rooms, carved of muck and chaff, humus and clay, denizens of the netherworld lounging, swapping stories from our time in the garden. But in the end, it would still be hell, which is why above our heads, threads of carrots, orange noses just poking through the ceiling of our eternity, bits of tangerine-colored stars floating in an earthen sky, under which we remain planted, tortured by the withholding. Okay. And we'll come back to the physical world a little bit here. You know, I read something by Ada Limon, an essay about the benefits, one of the benefits of Zoom being not thinking about the body, you know, so much of, you know, like we just get to be these little squares and not having to worry about especially as a woman. I mean, of course, it was like a long, involved, complex, beautiful essay. It was Ada Limon, but not thinking about our body in other people's spaces. But this is the body in a private space that I'm bringing to a public space. Go figure. Who has taught me to love this body? So many days wishing against bone. Flesh, cruel enemy, Mira, my captor. A mother content in silence throughout my youth, not chastisement, but indifference. Then gone. So alone I study the catechism of age. Yet as years gather, lover's bouquet of wild flowers that blaze and fade, your arms all this time around me like water. Your arms also the raft perched atop water, like how feathered bodies ride, bones filled with currents of air, drift and hold. In your arms, weightless, buoyant, swell and float, hushed embrace, fresh rush of strength, sluicing uncertain liturgy. I marvel at the simplicity. How generously the heart can bend if left to follow its own ends. I follow you. My reflective glass, specter and shadow, flame and wave, slip closer, thigh, coiled spread of skin on torso. What else should I dare ask for? It's in the dark. I know my shape. Sachet and friction, soft night, velvet slide, all I feel from this sublime stage, this rapturous reprieve, from this tender hunger. I'm filled to be in a body, that I have a body to fill. And for a moment, all the meadows, every ocean is mine. And then sometimes it doesn't go so well. This is called match. He's breakfast. I'm lunch. He's drop off. I'm pick up. Don't let the balance fool you. This isn't harmony. It's marriage. I'm looking for tenderness in myself. Any vein will do. I'm a village of discontent. I'm a rickshaw, pickaxe, rusted all. I'm all I can take right now. I'm lonely when I'm right. Scrabbling solely for light and lift from what I'm bound to. If that sounds ridiculous to you, it's because it is. I'm hoping for redress, but say it with teeth clenched. I'm prescient soldier, he's torn flag. I'm tack in the shoe, he's asphalt path. I'm territorial hummingbird, every word, dragonfire. I'm don't come close, closer. He's stone well, stone wall, a reservoir, a ringing bell, landslide near miss. We're just racing between the house and my little box studio.
Great.
Okay.
Well, we're delighted to have you back, and we look forward to hearing you.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, yeah, I'm good. I will read this one off my computer screen. You ready for me?
Yes.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
So I guess it cut out in the middle of this little poem. It's not, probably wasn't much more. But so this is match. He's breakfast, I'm lunch. He's drop off, I'm pick up. Don't let the balance fool you. This isn't harmony, it's marriage. I'm looking for tenderness in myself. Any vein will do. I'm a village of discontent. I'm a rickshaw, pickaxe, rusted all. I'm all I can take right now. I'm lonely when I'm right, scrabbling solely for light and lift from what I'm bound to. If that sounds ridiculous to you, it's because it is. I'm hoping for redress, but say it with teeth clenched. I'm prescient soldier, he's torn flag. I'm tack in the shoe, he's asphalt path. I'm territorial hummingbird, every word, dragonfire. I'm don't come close, closer. He's stone well, stone wall, a reservoir, a ringing bell, landslide, near miss. We're the perfect match. Strike us against the box. Watch us ignite into bliss. Okay. Ta-da. Okay, so I'm going to read a couple of poems. I'm going to read a couple of poems that are framed in childhood, but of course are trying to say something else. You know us troublesome poets that do that, use ostensible subjects. American childhood. Patty and I played together every day, like on the rusted metal swing set in my backyard, the bench swing with its 2 seats facing each other, where we played Subway, though we'd never been on one. We were 5, 6 maybe, Long Island kids who watched too much TV, heard our parents talk about the city. We played close to the Meltzer's fence in case Mrs. Meltzer was outside and had lollipops. We played around the wood pile after the big oak came down. I don't remember a tree missing. In those days, they seemed to be everywhere, huge, hugging us in, guardians. Until the time Patty wanted to take home the odd piece of log we both thought looked like a gun. I said no. It was mine. I learned already about possession, about what held currency beyond the trees. It was the mid-70s. We were cradled in a valley between. The Kennedys were dead. Martin, Malcolm. But up the other side, John Lennon and Marvin Gaye still had a few years left to imagine what was going on. Patty asked again. I said no again. We fought about it. She rushed away in tears. I held the gun in my hand, closed one eye, aimed it at her back as she ran. Excuse me. Now that you know who you're dealing with, right? This poem, I'm also going to take you back to the 70s, specifically to the mid 70s, 1976, the U.S. bicentennial, the scourge of my childhood, where everything was printed with one of those eagles. Everything was those eagles. I don't know if you remember. But I wrote this poem several years back, really when I was trying to rally my own spirits. This was early on in the Trump era. And disaster, which is mentioned in the poem, is spelled with a capital D. Lamps. My mother used to tell me there was a time she kept a closet full of lamps. So whenever one of her kids broke one, she'd sweep up and pull another out. I imagine her trolling Saturday morning garage sales of the 70s, buying every cheap, ugly thing that lit, handing over $1, 50 cents, maybe haggling them down to a quarter. A woman with a stockpile of light sources at the ready, while her children flipped through the living room like gymnasts. My brother leaping for all he was worth toward the old brown sectional, the rug underneath a hot pit of lava. My sister's dance moves a sensation before the crowd was stunned to silence in the wake of a tragic mishap with the coffee table. Mom could have told them to stop. But she knew sometimes you need disaster to strike, to cut yourself until you bleed and everything goes dark. At our house, Disaster walked through the front door as familiar as spring mud. We set it a place at the table, and after its belly stretched taut, sent it on its way and got back down to business. Some days you landed your backflip. Some days you didn't. I can still see her, a widow with a penchant for the practical, holding an end table model with off-white shade, its copper base molded in the form of an eagle. Cord dangling, her hand gripping the bird by the throat. So, so where I live right now, and I lived in the Monterey Bay for 13 lovely years. And the town where I live right now is a town and a river away from the town of Amherst, Massachusetts, which many of you will recognize as the hometown of Emily Dickinson. And indeed, Emily Dickinson's home is there, and her brother Austin's home a few yards away. And they are museums, and you should definitely come. You've got plenty of time to plan your trip because they're under renovation right now. But next year, when you book your flight, come in, and you have to do the tour multiple times because you have to make sure to do it until you get the guide that gives you all the juicy, gossipy, speculative details. That's the one you want. And that reads her letters and poems. But it's really a wonderful place and a wonderful tour. Also, Amherst, Massachusetts, I know, just like Tour House. Amherst, Massachusetts is also home to a few thousand undergraduate students who attend the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And it may not shock you that sometimes the agenda of the college kids is sort of in conflict, shall we say, with what the good people of Amherst who reside there might want. And so this next poem plays a little bit with that. It was ripped from the headlines, shall we say, from the Hampshire Gazette, the local paper. And the title of the poem is the headline, and then there's a little epigraph that came from the article. So, sometimes I think Amherst might not have changed that much since Dickinson's time, but anyway, okay. Beloved fiberglass pig stolen. Disappearance of Pegasus, described as devastating. Many believe the theft was carried out by college students based on the surveillance footage. It can take something drastic to open your eyes. Haven't you ever thought you had found your path only to wake up one morning a completely different animal? Recognize things about your life you didn't understand were missing until then? Don't get me wrong. The playground was paradise. Amber leaves, tickling snowfalls, pregnant red buds, bleaching sun, the laughter of children scattered like poppy petals, the quiet after dark, everything at my hooved feet. But now, the voices close to me deep, worried turning of textbook pages, Mardi Gras beads around my fat pink neck, the faint odor of stale beer. I love it all. They carried me here. It wasn't easy. I was chosen. Do you know how that feels? Every time a new sock or camisole hangs from one of my ears, a book bag swings into my snout, I count my blessings. Those I left behind, they'll heal. Find a raccoon or a bunny. Someone will pour the mold for a 400-pound beaver, mount it on rebar, and they'll fall hard in love again. Here, I'm the only one. Indispensable. Ready on the wing for the first time. And I know. Where do we go from there? Well, another headline poem, of course. So I have two very short little things that I'm going to close with. And thank you so much for your patience tonight, this afternoon. I told you I'd bring you back to the garden. And so we're back in the garden. This poem, or this headline, came from nationalgeographic.com, although I know that this story has made the rounds, so it's probably been many places. Why this Florida owl raised a duckling as its own. Oh, we're back to owls too. See, we came full circle. A gardener disappears small dots into darkness, then waits. All our potential looks the same at that stage. The blessing, the surprise that makes me think tomorrow again I will rise out of bed and even grin at the day imprinting itself through the blinds, light following me around from room to room, is that after we see what grows, we don't flee, but share our space in the world with whatever blooms. And I'm going to close with this garden exit. The same morning, the ambulance arrived. Mom was in the garden, taking pictures of the Queen Anne's lace. Like stars, she wrote in her journal sometime before they put her on the gurney, like the night above us. Lines on the monitor wrote themselves across the expanse of screen, a child coloring in the sky. Everything grows and grows, she said, handing the nurse back a cup of water. Such a miracle. What can bloom from a tiny seed, she told the doctors. Isn't it a miracle? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kitty. That was wonderful. Just wonderful. And you both, you guys, I love the wording, the imagery that you've given us. Kitty, you talked about how marvelously the heart can bend if left to its own ends. And the village of discontent that you had become in the poem Match. And then your very prescient words, sometimes you need disaster to strike. And then you go on and say you get down to business after that. And we share our space in the world with whatever blooms. I love that. You gave us something to share today, and we thank you very much for that. Thank you both. Thank you everyone for being with us. Thank you, technology, for enabling this to happen. And thank you for our surmounting the little intermission we had there. Please come back. We'll do this again on Sunday, November 14th. Sally Ashton and Joanna Martin will be our two poets reading for us. We'll do it via Zoom. Before we go, I want to shout out and thank Kent Leatham, who served as our host for the last 2 months of readings, and invite you to continue to be with us as we go forward. If you have any need for information about the consortium, you could certainly email me. If you have a chance and you're in Monterey, do go visit Old Capitol Books. Be sure to like us on Facebook, and also check out our YouTube channel. And please come back. And thank you for being with us today. Enjoy yourselves. Have a happy Halloween between now and when we next get together. And let's see, I guess we're before Thanksgiving, so we'll see you after Halloween. Paula and Kitty, thank you so much for a wonderful reading, for just making this afternoon a good one. And you all take care, and we'll see you when we're next together. And I'll ask Paula and Kitty to stay on just a little bit so we can get a screenshot for Facebook. But before we do that, I'd like everybody to give me a great big smile. And this is the one that'll go into Facebook now. On 3, 1, 2, 3. Great, guys. Thank you. So look for us on Facebook. And thanks again for being with us today.